To buy or to rent? That is the question. When it comes to home ownership, a lot of people say that buying is superior to renting. But today we're going to dive deep. Why is that? So first we're going to start with the pros and cons of renting and buying, and then we're going to go into a real world example of a property that I found here in Hawaii, so you could even figure out if you can buy or rent in Hawaii. But the analysis that I'm going to do can apply to any property out there, so if you don't live in Hawaii, this still applies to you. And at the end of it all, I'm going to tell you my thoughts on buying versus renting and kind of what I'm doing with my own life. And again, I'm not a multi-millionaire, I'm not some sort of guru out there for real estate. I'm just some dude in Hawaii that wants to share his experiences with everyone else out there so you don't make any of the same mistakes as me. So if you're new here, hit that like button, subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to see more videos about making money, engineering, and Hawaii. And with that said, let's get into the video. So pros and cons of renting versus buying. The pros of renting: you have good mobility. So if you work at a job that makes you move around a lot, it can be kind of a hassle if you're trying to buy and sell every state that you're going to. Renting gives you the option of how you can set up your lease so that you can set up yearly leases, month to month, things like that, so you have the option to move around when you want. Or just like in college where maybe you lived 1 year with your friends and maybe you want to move to a different part of town a year later, being able to rent allows you to do things like that. The other thing about renting is that you don't have to deal with any of the repairs. If something leaks in your house or if there's something that goes wrong, the landlord is the one that's responsible. Unless obviously you cause the damage yourself. And maybe you just can't live at home. Your parents are sitting there, you're pleading, you're trying to get them to like the video and subscribe to the channel and they just won't do it. Renting allows you to live in a place of your own without the huge down payment of owning a home, and you can just start that life on your own. And then the money that you save by not making the down payment, you can put towards some sort of other investment, whether it be in the stock market or running your own business, things like that. But now the cons of renting. So your rental payment every single month, all of that money goes to someone else. And I'll get into it a little bit later on why your home ownership payment does not go entirely to somebody else and some of it comes back to you. And then again, when you're a renter, you have no control over what your rent is going to be. Your landlord is the one that controls your rent, and they may likely increase your rent as the market goes up. You also don't have as much freedom on what you want to do with your home. You can't really make too many renovations, depending on your relationship with your landlord, but for the most part, any money that you put into the place will not come back to you. So now we're into buying. What are the pros of buying? So when you buy a home, your payments on your home go towards equity. Equity in the home is essentially how much of the home that you own. So for example, usually when you buy a home, you put down 20% as a down payment, so your equity in the home is 20%. Every month you make payments that a lot of people refer to as your mortgage payment. A portion of that mortgage goes towards the equity of the home. So you'll start off with owning 20% of the home, and with your monthly mortgage payments you'll slightly build more and more equity, so you'll own 20, then 30, then half the home, and eventually after the 30-year loan period you'll own the entire thing. So when you buy a home, a portion of your monthly living expense goes essentially back to you, and it just acts as like a little piggy bank. And in this way it sort of forces you to save some of your money and build it for yourself. The other thing in buying a home is once you invest in it, there's opportunities for appreciation. Essentially what that means is that your home has the potential to go up in value, and all of that goes back to you. If you live in a relatively desirable place like Hawaii, it used to be California, but I don't know, you look at all these YouTube videos out there, apparently no one wants to live there anymore. But usually places like that with good weather and just a desirable place to live, you'll see higher appreciation. So in Hawaii, over the past 20 years, the amount real estate appreciates every year is on average about 5.5%. And it's so crazy to see that homes 20 years ago were selling for about $300,000 and are now selling for about $800,000. Crazy stuff. And then the last pro is that when you lock in your mortgage for 30 years, you have a guaranteed monthly payment on that. So unlike we talked about for renting, where your landlord can increase your payment, you pretty much know what your monthly payment is going to be every month. Also, owning the home, you have options of putting more money into it, like by renovating and increasing your value on the home, or you can rent it out to somebody else and have them pay your monthly payments. And which to me is one of the coolest things about owning real estate. And I'll make an entire video on this later on how I'm planning on using my current unit as a rental property. But the cons of buying. You need a decent amount of money for the down payment, especially if you live in a place like Hawaii where the average home is like $800,000. Which means you have a huge chunk of money that gets tied up in the property and you can't use that money in other areas of your life. So you have to consider that the money that you're putting into the home, there's some sort of opportunity cost to that, whether it's opening up your own business, investing in the stock market, paying off your debt, things like that. There are options out there for you to put less money down on real estate property. However, that comes at the expense of either higher interest rates and paying something called private mortgage insurance, which is essentially the lender's way of saying, hey, you don't have enough money tied up in this property, so I'm going to charge you a little extra just because we have more risk in this property than you. And that rolls nicely into my next con, is that when you invest in real estate, you own all the risk. Now, some people may say, you know, as a long-term investment, real estate always goes up. But what is your definition of long-term? Would you think 10 years is long term? So here's a great example. The Hawaii market, which I just said was so wonderful with our beaches and construction. Over the 10-year period between 1992 and 2002, real estate actually dropped in value. So when you put your money into real estate, you do run that risk. However, if you extrapolate that to 20, 30 years down the line, it usually goes up. You also own the risk of things happening in your home. Say if there's some sort of leak, there's any sort of damage, that's on you. And that's why you have to budget a certain amount of money for expenses, because something's just going to happen down the line. And there's also a bunch of other extra fees that are not apparent with home ownership. You not only have your mortgage, you also have to pay property taxes, insurance. If you live in a building like me, you're paying some sort of maintenance fee. So there's just a bunch of little added costs that just may build up over time, and it may just not make sense for you to own a home, because you'll be able to find a place that you can pay less rent at than your cumulative monthly payment for buying. So that was a brief overview of pros and cons. Now let's jump into a brief example. So here we have a nice 1-bedroom apartment in Waikiki, 1 parking stall. This is what $400,000 can buy you in Hawaii. Now to rent a place like this, you'll probably pay something around $1,900 per month. That's pretty cut and dry, that's your monthly payment. Buying is a little bit more complicated. So again, keep in mind, if you're going to buy this property, you'll likely have to put down 20%, which means you'll have to have $80,000 to put into this property, which is a decent amount of money. But that aside, you'll likely have to lock in some sort of interest rate for your mortgage payment. Around now, mortgage rates are pretty low, so let's use 3% as our number, which means that you'll be paying about $1,349 per month as part of your mortgage payment. And since I was called out in my last video, John Sakamoto, Hawaii property tax is lower. Typically it's around 1% in the US, but in Hawaii it's a lot lower. So we'll use 0.35% for the property tax, which comes out to about $120 per month. So again, keep in mind, if you don't live in Hawaii, you have to check the area for property tax so you can make this calculation properly. So like for homeowners insurance also, like California I think is a little bit higher since there's a lot of earthquakes. I don't know if homeowners insurance in places where they have like tornadoes and hurricanes are a little bit higher as well. But like in Hawaii, like for me, I was able to get my homeowners insurance payment to like less than $50 a month. But let's use $80 a month for this calculation. But here's the fee that really becomes bothersome. So because we're buying into a building, there's a maintenance fee that's involved. So like for my building, my maintenance fee is around 75 cents a square foot. Some of the newer buildings I've seen around here are about $1 per square foot. But as the building becomes older, they charge more and more for maintenance because it gets more and more expensive to fix. So here you see that this building was built a decently long time ago, so your maintenance fee is $794 a month, which is about $1.40 per square foot. So that's one thing about when you buy a place that has maintenance fees, it's only going to increase. Keep that in mind. And let's throw $157 per month in here for miscellaneous repairs, just to make this a nice round number. So in total, adding everything together, you have to pay $2,500 per month to own this home. So at this point, some of you may be saying, guess I should rent then. Well, not so fast. There's certain perks that come with home ownership, and that's what we're gonna go over now. So like I said earlier, your mortgage payment is made up of principal and interest. So though your mortgage payment is consistent every single month, the proportion of principal and interest in each payment is different as your loan progresses. Again, you locked in an interest rate of 3%. Your interest is calculated on the remaining balance of your loan that you have. So at the beginning of your loan, you have to pay more money in interest because you have more loan to pay. So I'll throw up a graphic here showing how much interest you pay at your beginning versus how much goes to principal. And then as you go towards the end of your loan, you pay less in interest, almost zero, and then all of your monthly payment is basically going back to paying down the principal. And again, the principal payment is essentially what's going back into your pocket, and you're essentially paying yourself. So if you think long-term averages, things like that, and you're holding this property for 30 years, Average over the 30 years, every single month, you're paying $889 towards principal and you're paying $460 towards interest. Which means that though you're paying $2,500 per month, $889 of that is essentially going back to yourself because you're building equity in the property. So in reality, it's actually more like $1,611 per month. But wait, there's more. With home ownership, you get tax benefits. So you're allowed to deduct the interest paid on your mortgage from the amount of income that you're taxed on. In other words, you're decreasing your amount of taxable income, and that therefore allows you to pay less taxes. And say you're in somewhere in like the 20% tax bracket, that'll come out to about $92 per month that you save on your tax bill. And again, you pay more interest at the beginning of your loan, so this $92 is just an average over the 30 years. But at the end of the day, your cost to own this home every single month is more like $1,519 per month. And that is the beauty of home ownership. You also have to keep in mind that the $1,900 that we're considering for rent is today's rent. As the market goes up, or maybe it's going up with inflation, your rent's going to increase. And since your mortgage payment is fixed over the 30 years, as your rent increases, that gap between the rent that you're paying and your monthly payment will increase. So now we've looked at the two monthly payments, rent versus buying. But there's a lot of people out there that would say, well, sir, that $80,000 that you put in, that could have been invested and grown to an amount that's higher than your home. So yes, this is very true. We have to consider this. So again, the Hawaii market over the past 20 years has grown at a 5.5% rate. It seems really insane for you to consider this over a 30-year period, because that would mean that this $400,000 home would be well over $1 million worth 30 years from now. Which maybe it will be, but who really knows? Assuming that it's less than that at 4%, you're still looking at this property being worth $1.2 million 30 years from now. And so technically you've made about $600,000 by investing your money into this property. So that means you would need to grow that $80,000 investment initially by 16% over 30 years in order to make this kind of gain. And 60% is a huge return to have every single year for 30 years. So if you can buy a home, you have enough money saved for the down payment, you run the numbers like we did just now, in the long term, owning a home is usually the better call. I would almost dare to say that it's almost always the better call. For us regular people, the only time that I would say that it's best for you to rent is if you're moving around a lot and you don't have a lot of location stability. Or if you really need to move out of your parents' house in order to maintain the relationship. Other than that, be diligent with your spending, save as much money as you can, live with your parents or live with someone else or roommates to keep your costs down so that you can save enough money to get into home ownership. And again, you can get into the housing market with not as much down payment. You just have to keep in mind that there are going to be extra fees and higher interest rates involved, so you have to take that into consideration when you're analyzing your home. Always run the numbers on these kinds of things, because not every home is a good deal and will work out this way. And think long term, embrace that long term mindset, and I think we'll all be thanking ourselves later when we jump on this kind of stuff really early. So my thoughts on home ownership: if the numbers work, you should do it. To me in Hawaii, real estate is not getting any cheaper, and the more that you delay the process and don't become aggressive in saving, the harder you're going to make it on yourself later on. And then it becomes really awesome when you can rent it out to someone else and they can pay you to build equity in your home. You just have so many more options with home ownership to grow your money. So the more serious you can be about focusing on investing and being diligent with your finances, the better off you will be in the long run. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any further questions about anything that I talked about, please comment below and I'll do my best to reply to you. I really love real estate and I made a lot of mistakes when I was buying my first home, and quite honestly, I'm still new to this whole process too. I just want anyone out there to learn from any of the mistakes that I've made and hopefully enjoy any of the gains that I also make in the future. So if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can join our growing family here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time and I'll see you on the next video.